Welcome to Conversations in Mind. This is a space for conscious inquiry, where metaphysics, new thought, and the science of mind meet real life. In a world calling for deeper awareness, we explore the nature of consciousness, the power of thought, and the presence of spirit moving through everyday experience. And now, here are your hosts, Barb Bue and Mark Gilbert.
And happy Tuesday. Thanks for joining us today. And we start with the question that we ask every week. What if your mind is more than just a collection of thoughts? And what if it's a gateway to a whole new way of living? I'm Reverend Barbara. I'm joined by my friend Reverend Mark as we come to you from Conversations in Mind, where we seek to demystify the study of new thought and dive into the science and soul of consciousness. We hoping that if you're a longtime seeker or just curious about the mind and the power of your own perspective, that you will join us and enjoy this conversation, which is going to be about the quote unquote negative emotions, because we drive ourselves a lot with our emotions, right? So we thought we'd take on this idea of negative emotions and see what that means in light of a spiritual experience in life. So, hi, Mark.
Hi, Barb. Yeah, this is a topic that I'll say that I've been thinking about since we came up with it about 24 hours ago.
Yes. Boom, baby.
That's an interesting topic, and what do I really think about that? And there's a lot of things that I have vetted in my mind and have sort of like I probably come across as really knowing about something. This will not be one of those.
Okay.
However, when I did think
I think you're going to be surprised, actually.
Maybe, but I have been reflecting on it. And the first thought that came up for me was why we were even delving into this topic. And I think partly and you can correct me if or your own take on this, but I know that there's a lot of people when they first come to New Thought and we talk about the power of thinking. And we did an episode about when our thoughts don't match our affirmations, when our body doesn't resonate with it a few weeks ago. And it's a very similar kind of thing, that sometimes we feel like we have to control our emotions, that there are these people who feel like if I say anything negative, then I am counter to what I'm learning in New Thought. New Thought teaches the power of positive thinking. And since we can't be negative in the least bit in any way, and which is a wrong way
the
of looking.
Power of spiritual bypass. Yes.
But so many people, and I know probably, I can confess to a degree, I had that many, many years ago when I first encountered the teaching, was this sort of thing that, oh yeah, affirmations and positive thinking. And the more I got to keep thinking focused positively, yet I would have emotions that would be negative. And I would wonder, how do I mix those together? How do I try to handle or deal with emotions that are negative? And I would guess that what a lot of people try to do is deny them. They try to say, I don't have those emotions. It's a incorrect way. I'll just say that at the outset of trying to deal with it. You have to recognize that if your emotions aren't matching what you're trying to affirm, that you need to recognize what is in you that's driving those emotions and take a hard look at that, but not simply deny the emotions and try to paint over them, push them down and hold them in a popping trash can.
Right. If I affirm and I affirm and I affirm, all this will go away. And mostly what it does is it creates an unresonance or a disresonance. I guess I'm making that word up within our body, because our body knows what our body knows. And, we've learned more about that, but I remember feeling really guilty if I had a negative thought or a negative emotion. And oh my God, all this work I've been doing, I just tossed it out the window because I had this one thing, right?
Yeah. Stop that stinking thinking. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah, I forgot that one. But, I think, I've always, eventually I learned that it's really about the predominant thinking, and how much time we spend on those things. But I've come to a really different place in this, I think, with I feel, and we actually talked about this a little bit in the show that will have aired last week, when we were talking about conscious relationships, which is our emotions are data points, right? I mean, our emotions can be the guide. If we're having I don't think there's a negative emotion. I think that there are negative expressions of emotion.
Mm-hmm.
There are ways that create negativity in our life that we express our emotions for sure. But our emotions are just our emotions, and
Right.
good, bad, or indifferent. Um, and mostly they are a tool to learn what it is that's not vibing in our being at the level that we want it to be at. And if we can get curious and inquire within ourselves about, okay, and I'll use traffic as an example. We can get mad at traffic, but are we really mad at traffic, or are we constantly stressed out, and are we constantly in a hurry, and are we constantly like behind in something, and then what's behind that, and what's behind that, and what's behind that, and can we get to, the emotion is an effect, not the cause.
Right.
And I guess that's the thing, right? Like the emotion is simply an effect of some other cause that we might want to uncover and unbury and figure out, so that we can either release it or make a change in our life so that somehow we're not stuck in traffic so much.
Yeah.
Um,
I would agree with everything you said there, but I would add one sort of tweak, and we can get into this if you want.
yeah,
Is that I think there is an array of emotions, and that our emotions can be, as you're talking about, guideposts for what we want and what we don't want. And we are the ones, and I agree with you 100%. Emotions are simply emotions, and we're the ones who label them good or bad because they don't match what we are consciously desiring in the moment. But I also believe that there are emotions that are driven by, we look out at the physical material life and see gaps between what we desire and what we're experiencing. And we have an emotion over that gap, be it a death, a divorce, or somebody cutting us in traffic, or whatever it is, somebody
yeah,
suicide, poorly. And I think that we can look at that and say, that's not what I want to experience. And that positive emotions can turn us upward towards the spirit, to return us home, so to speak. And I always bring this up, that everything is sort of moving us from a state of immaturity to maturity, or from separation and fear to unity and oneness. And
yes,
so we're on that path. And I think positive emotions can serve as something to aspire to, that we know that when we get in those moments of awe, of moments where we're feeling an emotion of bliss and love, of a great inner sense of great connectedness, that we feel the glorious nature of those moments, and they attract us to wanting more of those moments. And so I think their emotions at the what we humanly label negative can serve as something, as contrast to turn away from, and that positive emotions can be sort of like hooks from spirit, in a way, to attract us up to spirit, to return us to wanting that state of bliss and oneness, and that they are sort of guideposts that move us from the lower levels of our being to the higher levels of our being.
yeah, totally. And I have to say, like, I probably am a bit of an overthinker sometimes, because when right, particularly, if it's my own crap.
Conversations in mind.
So are those things that we simply turn away from, or are those things that we solve? And I have to, I'm probably more of a solver. Like, what's behind it, what wants to be resolved, what needs my attention, if anything, before I can just turn away. Because for me, just turning away feels like that thing of, I'm just going to pretend this doesn't exist. And what I've learned for me is that when I pretend things don't exist, they come back.
Yeah.
So if the thing, whatever it is, probably something within a relationship, something within our day-to-day life, is a thing that sets us off regularly, then what's behind it, and why, and what change do we then make to resolve that, so that we're not in that we're not having to think about it anymore. You know, that's the thing. Like if we can do something so that we no longer have to fixate on that thing, then we have more space for awe and wonder and peace and even sitting in stillness.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I know that, and I appreciate you saying that, because I think a moment ago, what I was trying to paint was a picture of we have these so-called negative emotions, and they're guideposts for turning us towards what we would desire. But when I say turn away from, I'm saying it's where we're going. But I don't mean to include that we deny or ignore them. I agree with you 100% that when we have negative emotions, we have to stop and say, what is this about? What is it? We have to bring it to conscious awareness so that we can deal with it and heal it. Otherwise, it's going to keep festering. In fact, I was, in preparation for this, I went back and was trying to say, well, what did Ernest Holmes say about feelings? And one of the quotes I kept getting over and over when he would reference the word feelings was the fact that suppressed feelings were one of the major causes of most physical and mental conditions that humans have. Mm-hmm. And so what you're getting at is that same thing, is that if we simply turn away without healing the emotional issue that keeps coming up for us, then we're suppressing that emotion. We're not acknowledging that we have that reaction. And anything that we suppress, it's going to come back and bite us. It's going to come back out as shadow aspects of our being. And so we really do need to try to look at those things and hold them up and say, why am I feeling this way about this? If somebody cuts me off in traffic, or if somebody says a negative word and I get pissed off, then I need to look at that and say, okay, it's not about the event. It's not about the event. It's not about the other person. If they're, not to give the other person a pass on their actions, but
right, yeah, let's be careful there, right? Yeah.
Sometimes their actions, our reactions to their actions, is something for us also to look at. When we have judgment about a certain thing, our judgments are really mostly about us, and we need to go and look at, why is that emotion bubbling up in me because of this somewhat. In the heat of the moment, I get pissed off about it. But when I step away from it, I go, oh, it wasn't that big a deal. Why'd you get mad about that? I had a perfect example this morning. I was walking Penny, my chocolate lab, over at the park. And normally when you're walking by somebody in there and I have her leash extended out, for 15, 20 feet. Yeah. And, but when you're starting to come by somebody with another dog, I always rein her in. And I'm passing this other woman who has another dog. And so normally you just sort of like pass and you say hello and good morning, but occasionally somebody will take their dog way out of the way, because, for whatever reason, maybe their dog is aggressive or whatever. But this particular moment, normally I don't give a flying whatever about it. And this woman walks off the sidewalk with her dog, and then she's going, good dog, good girl, good girl, good girl to hers. And, normally I would think it was just funny. But for this particular morning, I get this sort of like emotional reaction. Well, there's nothing wrong with my dog. My dog's not being aggressive in this. It was like
your vicious chocolate lab. Yes, right. Like
my haunch got up on the back here. But I immediately said, and that's my good girl, and normally I would not give any, even think two thoughts about that. But then, like 10 feet further, I'm laughing at it to myself. Like, why did you feel like this was something you were reacting to? So I had to stop and sort of like think about that for a few moments and try to delve into, why did I get an emotion? It was a very minor one, but it was one that I thought, well, and all I could come up with was that maybe you can use that as an example on that video with Barb.
There you go. There you go.
But there's probably something more to it.
That's funny, because I have an old story about this kind of thing too. Like, years and years and years ago, I worked, I was in management with FedEx forever. So I just had to be at work at, what I called the butt crack of dawn. So, but I lived in LA, so there was already traffic then too. Right. And so I can't even begin to say how long I would be leaving at the last second. I would get stuck in traffic. I would be mad at traffic. I would be frustrated and stressed out and everything before I would even, way before I would even get to the building. Right. And one day, and this is so dumb, it's so dumb that it's so obvious. Right. And one day I was like, if I just left 10 minutes earlier, if I got up 10 minutes earlier and left 10 minutes earlier, all this would go away. And I was like, Right. You do that thing of duh,
Yeah.
which I started doing, and I had no more stress about it. But it's like, I was always tired too. So the extra 10 minutes of sleep seemed important. But um, it's so funny how these little things become these things until we sit and we want, and I was blaming traffic. I was blaming Los Angeles. I was blaming like having to be at work early. I was blaming everything except for the fact that I could just get up 10 minutes earlier.
Yeah, we tend to, we can talk about us being spiritual beings moving through this human experience, and the human experience gives these sort of gaps between what we want and what we're experiencing. But at the same time, and talk about oneness, yet at the same time, when we're in the midst of living it, all of a sudden we forget the oneness aspect. We forget that this is a great teaching ground for us to grow and evolve and to remember our truth. And instead, we get sucked into the story and get immersed into it. And it's so easy to flip from being there's times when I was driving and I used to practice affirmations and affirmative prayer when I was first learning it by driving. I would drive home from class doing prayers, but if somebody cut me off and, here I am supposed to be in a blissful prayer, they cut me off and I'm immediately cursing at them, so I can go from spiritual to human in half a nanosecond, as they say.
Well, that whole thing for me was way before I started to have like a conscious spiritual life, or be in this teaching, or that was a long time ago, but it still comes up as like, oh yeah, there's these just simple solutions. So I do want to talk a little differently though about fear, because there's a lot of that happening in the world right now, and a lot of it happening in the world of people that I relate to, who are progressive and not particularly for the current administration and or the war or any of these other things. So I guess my first question I'm going to ask you is, do you think fear is a negative emotion? Is it an emotion at all?
I'm not big on so much labeling things. I guess if I had to say, I would say there's an aspect of fear, or in our reactions to fear, that I believe can stoke emotions and bring up an emotional reaction. Whether I think fear is a very broad statement. Fear can lead to a number of different emotions within us. So we sort of put everything under the umbrella of the word fear. But I know what you're talking about. It's sort of a generalized state that we can be walking along and a snake comes out and we get fear of the snake in the moment, and then it passes. So that's one kind of emotional reaction to the fear in the moment. But there's also sometimes generalized fears where things are going on that seem like so totally out of your control, in a generalized state of there's nothing I can do about it. And, because of the small events in our life that bring up fear, we can immediately react and take action towards them. But there's also this generalized state of just fear about the world in general that I think that's what you're really getting at.
Well, kind of, because that kind of, the snake kind of fear is like the fear that keeps us alive, right?
Right.
Like fear is a healthy thing in many cases. It's born into us because we used to get chased by dragons, right? So, I mean, like...
Yeah, flight or fight.
Right. So there's that. But I feel like we're living in many ways in sort of this state of generalized fear that a lot of us are working to turn away from. Mm-hmm. And but I want to acknowledge it, and because our listeners may be in this, like in and out of it. Like, how much news do we consume? How much do we take in of what's going on, and let that turn into fear? And does that turn into some sort of action, or does it turn into a feeling of helplessness, or do we just need to turn that off? So let's come back to that. I know we need to take a break, so let's come back to that.
Okay.
After our little thank you for listening, please support the New Thought Media Network.
Yes.
Mark, take it on.
Yes, and I would encourage you to not only support the New Thought Network, but leave comments and suggestions for us. If you have a comment, however you're feeling, or wherever you're playing this video, drop a comment in the comment field, and we do monitor those. If you got a suggestion for future topics for us to discuss, be sure to put those in there. If you've got a reaction to the thing we're talking about, bring it on. We want to hear about that. But in all of this, we want to remind you that this platform that we're using, the New Thought Media Network, is a nonprofit, and its support is based on all of us coming together and supporting it financially. So here's a message for you on that.
We hope you're enjoying Conversations in Mind. This program is made possible by the New Thought Media Network, a nonprofit that's supporting conscious, spiritual media. If you'd like to support this work, just scan the QR code to make a donation. It lets the network know you like this show and helps them to continue bringing you this type of content. You can also go to ntmedia.org and click on Donate. Thank you for being part of the conversation. Now, back to the show.
And again, if you scan that QR code, it automatically links back and lets them know that you're supportive of this show as well. If you didn't quite get your chance to get your camera out, you can pause the video and go back. Muriel is right.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. She had to get her nails clipped this morning, and she just got back, and she's not very happy with me right now. So plus I had her locked out of the room so that when my mom dropped her off, we wouldn't have that noise. So now we have this noise.
Reality. Let's jump into the topic you were bringing up before.
This sort of generalized fear about what's happening in the world / the United States, primarily, U.S. centric though we are, and how do we manage that emotion that is like a current right now? And honestly, I feel a lot like there's a manipulation of people's feelings and fear going on in the world, and a lot of us are caught in it, and it's hard not to be caught. It's impossible almost not to be caught in it to some degree. So I guess, my thoughts about it are turning it down for one thing, but do you have any thoughts about it? I know I'm tossing this at you at the last, we didn't talk about this.
It's okay. It's a common conversation topic with many people that I know. Everybody I get together with, we tend to talk about what's going on in the world and our feelings about it. And I agree, probably, we often, it's almost cliche, but turn down the news, be informed but not inundated with it.
Yes.
Get yourself, because the more that you get involved in political commentary programs and YouTube videos and things of that nature, that tends to stir up your emotions around it. But at the same time, you don't want to be like an ostrich with your head in the sand and not knowing what's going on. And so, I say, listen and be informed. And then if you feel an inner calling within yourself to take action, then go take action, whatever that looks like. If it's donating to the organizations you think can do work, if it's volunteering for them, if it's going out with the Women's March group and marching in the streets, for the No King's Days and things like that, whatever is pertinent for you, voice your opinion on stuff. And let your, certainly write your congressman. Sometimes it seems like that's has no value to it, but it's something that you still need to step up and have your voice heard by your representatives and anybody that you think can listen to you. Write corporations that you disagree with. Write, contact and use your voice to every degree. Everything that I hear about in this in terms of, and I want to say right now I'm focusing on actions in the world of form.
Yeah.
And then there's also a spiritual reaction to it as well. But in the world of form, I think we can take a look and say, what is mine to do and be in reaction to this? From a heart, love-centered way. Don't stir up more divisiveness. When you see people being divisive, then step away from it. And then also try to temper your emotions. And it's common things that we've all had experiences where we get into situations where somebody pushes our button, and we have to stop and build that gap between stimulus and response.
Yes.
Where we can respond with love and what is the highest and best response. In some cases, it's not responding. Some cases, it's turning and walking away. Some cases, But in some cases, it's standing up with a healthy boundary and against other people in their actions, especially if they're causing harm. And every situation's different. So what I'm trying to get at is that as you're put with some situation where you are angry, ask yourself what's mine to do and be in this, but don't stew in the anger, because that stewing of the anger keeps feeding a sort of negative emotion, which can spiral downward into feelings of despair and hopelessness and things of that nature. What you want to do is say, well, maybe there's things out in the world that I can't directly impact, but I do have a sphere of influence around me that I can impact. And what is it? And what can I do? And what am I called to do? What intuitive messages am I getting that are really pushing me to act and be in a certain manner? You know, change where you're shopping, change the products you buy, march in the streets, write letters, join with other people. Do things that give you a sense of hope. Listen for hopeful messages. Find messages and things on the internet that give you hope and care for the future. There's lots of good stuff out there. There is a natural tendency within us in our humanness to want to focus on things that might cause us harm so that we know about them, so that we can protect ourselves as a human being. And that's a natural inclination. But I would also say that after we've done all the world of form stuff, Barb, we also need to turn ourselves up and say, what's the spiritual truth in this moment? What is this event saying to us that is for our highest this individualized aspect of this one? What am I to learn and grow through in this? And how can I hold truth to the vision that this is one, that we know this is one, that this is something that we are simply moving through in the world of form, but in our spiritual truth that transcends this human world, there's a higher and greater truth that is being served by the lessons we're going through. It's sort of like when our individual life, we have death, divorce, job loss, things like that cause us harm and pain and even negative emotions in the moments of our life. When we distance ourselves from time and space from it, we see that it served us. We learn something, we're growing, we're a higher, more wise person. I look at it collectively when we see all this angst that we're causing on the planet right now. It's a similar kind of thing, but we're doing it at the collective level. We're going through that dark night of the soul of the human species, and hopefully we don't destroy ourselves physically, but there's an instance where we're going, it's something we're going through that, and the pendulum will swing back. One of the things I know about my individual life and the collective life is that life moves in sort of cycles and pendulum swings, and it ends up being sort of like a spiral that we're ever moving upward. It doesn't mean we don't temporarily move back. And so holding hope to some things like that say this too will pass is great, great mental relief for me. To say in the short term, maybe some crap. In the long term, we're going to be okay.
So you'd had a few thoughts about this.
You obviously pushed a button there.
I think I did. I did not install that button, but I did push it. So, I think part of it too, what I want to add to that, I agree with you 1,000%, but what I want to add to that though is again, turning away from the fear and turning away and even looking for things to do that we're called to do. I think is important at this time particularly, or maybe at all times. We have to get it out of our body. Like we can't ignore it and pretend it's not there, because it is causing a lot of internal turmoil in people, and it's making people short-tempered. It's making people rude. It's making people sick. It's doing a lot of internal damage if we cannot figure out how to not just turn away from it, but also release it. Mm-hmm. In every moment, okay, here's this thing, I have a reaction to it, somehow to release it. And maybe releasing it is doing those things in form, like the marches and things like that. Maybe releasing it is turning to prayer or spiritual mind treatment for the life and the world that we actually want to see created on the other side of this shit show. Like, I mean, sorry, I'm not supposed to swear on here, am I? Do we do that once in a while? I keep saying that, I'm over 60, I swear more, and I never wear uncomfortable shoes. So this goes with my age. So, we have to get it, but we have to get it out of our bodies, because it's going to have an impact if we don't. And that feels a little lectury, sorry. So, but please find ways to move it out of your body. Like go to yoga, do some breathing, do something, move it through. But I also, I'm teaching a class right now. And one of the things I challenged people to do during the 4 weeks of this class was to stay off of social media until at least 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I just randomly picked 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but nonetheless, it is kind of amazing. First of all, people's arguing for their social media at the beginning, like, well, is this social media? Is this social? I'm like, it's Instagram. Yes, that's social media. But in the short term, couple of weeks that this has been going on, people's lives are changing directly as a result of that. Like they have more time. They didn't realize how much time they were sucked into it. They're not as angry. They're not as frustrated. They're not as sad. There's like so much. And so I really believe that we are kind of being fed an emotional soup.
Right.
Probably on both sides of the divide, call it, that we have in the United States right now. There is just as much feeding of all of that fear and all of that stuff on the right side of the aisle as there is on the left side of the aisle. And it's just different, but it's the same soup in many ways. And if we don't unplug from it, we're going to hurt each other, I mean, we're already hurting each other, but we got to unplug.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. There's plenty of stuff out there to show that the corporations who run social media, that they have their algorithms are driven to maintain our interest and keep watching and being engaged with the social media. We're the product. Our eyeballs and attention are their product.
Yeah.
And so this is where they make their money by running the ads, et cetera. So they want us to be engaged. And they found that the things that stir up our negative emotions, again, negative being relative in the life, but the things that bring up those reactions of fear and concern that we're talking about tend to keep us engaged in the social media. So we can post, and I love the fact that there's lots of people, and myself included, that will go out on social media and post positive and loving messages and things like that. And we share these videos on social media, et cetera.
Yeah.
And so there's plenty of positive stuff out there, but the algorithms are generated to show us the more negative, and we feel a desire, so that we're, if we're given two things on social media, which one are we going to pick? We're going to pick the one that's, going to take us down a rabbit hole of negativity and conspiracy theories and things like that. And whereas the things that we know are uplifting and positive for us, I'll come back to that later, when I've got time. I got to go down to this other stuff first.
Yeah, that's interesting that we do that to ourselves, and we do that to ourselves in a lot of ways, but that is true. And they have really figured out how much of our attention they can hold, but based on the slightest delays in what we're looking at. Right? We take what feels like 2 extra seconds to us, and and they are clocking it. And it's fascinating kind of how it's all working or not working, as the case may be.
Yeah. So I guess the call for anybody who's listening to this is to monitor their social media. I know there's, my wife was doing something recently with a group where they had to write down everything, for a period of how much time they were spending on different things in the day and monitor that. And social media being one of those things. I would encourage people to do something where they, at least, if nothing else, when you start to do social media, see how much time you're spending and see if you can just cut it down a little bit.
Well, yeah, because there's all these studies now that show that, social media is a continual dopamine hit, and we only have X amount of dopamine a day, basically. And so we spend it all there, and then we're tired, and we don't know why we're tired. And also, I was talking to my niece about this recently, because she's 21, she's a college student. She's doing really, really well. She's been taking social media off of her phone during the week. Mm-hmm. Because she realized how much time she was spending on it. But we were talking about there are now studies that show that because our brains react the way they do to stimulus, like And this is an example from my class. There's a woman who was talking about she loves to quilt, but she hadn't been quilting lately. She just watches quilting videos. And now she's quilting again because she's not watching quilting videos. It's your brain translates the quilting videos into you doing something like quilting, even though you're not actually getting any quilting done. And I was like, yeah, I can watch all kinds of videos about exercise. I can. And then I never do it.
I'm watching videos of people using social media. I'm joking.
Right. Yeah.
But I do know people who watch videos of people playing video games, which is
they're doing that live. That's like a sporting event now, watching people play video games. I'm like, okay, I do not understand that. If you're listening and you understand that, please write us a note, because I'd really love to understand that. Like, that just doesn't seem fun to me at all. And I used to like video games, but yeah, I don't know.
I want to put another thing on the table here when we're talking about feelings and emotions. When I was thinking about this in the last 24 hours, I immediately went to, and a lot of people who followed or into New Thought, they follow things like Abraham Hicks, or the work of David Hawkins, and Power versus Force fame.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that both, Abraham Hicks had the thing that emotions were tools for us to develop contrast so that we would move to more positive emotions. So if we're in negative emotions, find what it is about the negative emotion and move to more positive emotion. So it was always trying to move us up a spectrum from lower vibratory or worse emotions to higher emotional states. And David Hawkins, of course, used
the scale.
He had a scale as well, but his scale was developed by using kinesthesiology or muscle testing by using muscle testing methods. You're tapping into the wisdom of the body to develop whether something is strong or weak. And by that, he developed a calibration scale where he assigned numerical values to things. And so that lower numerical values, what he found was the negative emotions, what we call negative emotions here, have that lower vibratory or lower scale on the body's resonance to truth. And the better, or up to love and oneness and bliss, were scored at a much higher level on his scale. So both of them sort of aligned to the same sort of truth. And as I thought about that, Barb, I also thought, well, there's so many energy teachers and mystics through the years have talked about the interlocking or interlaced multiple bodies of the human person, that we have a physical body and that we have an etheric body, which is our life force or prana, and that beyond that is an emotional body and then a mental body. So we're sort of like nested Russian dolls, but we're all immersed within what we see as our body, our physical bodies, are these different vibratory states going on that have different aspects to what they're about, including an emotional body that's part of our body. And so, I was trying to figure out, okay, well, if our emotions are impacting us and our spending time on social media is feeding our emotional bodies, that obviously is having an impact not only in our physical self, feeling those gut feelings of anger and fear, and the generalized state of, the world's going to hell in a handbasket, which raises this just physical feeling, but it also has this, it locks into our emotional body and can in fact affect our mental states as well. And so if I like using those models together, sort of like made me think, well, obviously we want to deal with what's causing the emotions so that we can change the conditions and change our beliefs and start moving in. But sometimes just understanding that emotions are not something distant from us, that maybe they're something that's within us, that our mind, our emotions, and I would add that as we go to higher mind, we go to states of different bodies that go on up to the spiritual and bliss and divine bodies, that we have these various vibratory states within us. And this is not just Mark talking. This is like so many people from so many mystical traditions and energy medicine traditions say all of the same stuff. And it's an interesting to flip our thing and think about, well, then emotions are something that's vibrating within me. And I've got to somehow or another, maybe just like if I had a physical illness in me, would I not want to address that? Well, in a degree, our physical bodies are linked to our emotions and our minds and to spirit. And we need to take a look at if our emotions are out of whack on stuff, then we have to get them into alignment, get them into harmony with the divine. And a lot of that is looking to say what's the highest for ourselves. So I don't know. I just bring this to the table to see what your thoughts are on it and how it might relate to our conversation.
So I think I like the scales in some ways. Like I feel like the scale helps people to, understand. So what I've noticed is like for people, it's really hard to go from depressed to joyful.
Right.
You can go from depressed to frustrated to angry to a window of happiness. And each of those steps feels better. But what I've also noticed is that the folks the longer that we're staying in this anger frustration place, the more we're bringing in this, the more it's actually pushing us down instead of up into sort of a sense of helplessness and malaise. Like,
right.
Because that anger that's out there right now there's nothing we can do about it. There's very little we can impact. But in the sphere of our personal lives, we can. And so, I've talked a lot with people one-on-one about, okay, so what would be the next thing? Like if we can't talk about joy today because you're just completely not in alignment with joy, what can we talk about? And because you can see the scale or understand the scale, you don't need to feel guilty about not feeling joy yet, because
right.
it is a progression. And we'll have moments where we shoot off into joy, just like we have moments when we shoot off into anger. But in a general sense, there is a step and a platform and a step and a platform. And when we try to leap to here, we can't get it into our bodies in a way that it stays. When we get to the next step up, we can incorporate it into our body in a way that it stays, so that we can then take the next step up and it becomes permanent change, or as permanent as things can be, but mostly permanent change instead of just flash in the pan change.
Right.
And I think that's important, especially right now, as as everybody's sort of girded up, like let's let go of the defense a little bit so that we can actually bring in something else. I think it's really hard to bring in joy when we're defensive about when we're in defense, right? So
yeah,
that was a lot.
No, that's a good point, and I agree with you 100%. It's it ties back to Abraham Hicks' work, and they talk a lot about the incremental steps of moving up are going to be much more beneficial for you to work on than try to make giant leaps.
Yeah. No, you can see the leap. You can see some people can see the leap, where the leap would take them. And that's awesome. But it's very hard to make the leap and then have it live in us in a way that's real and sustainable, unless we've done some of the steps in between. Some people can probably, but what I've noticed in people is that the next step is usually good and enough for now. And then live in it. Let it live in your body. Let it live in your mind. Let it live in your heart, so that you can actually incorporate it in a real way before you continue to move forward.
It's like developing your physical body from being flabby to an athlete. You got to do it step by step and celebrate along the way each of the little steps that you've made, to acknowledge, because it's easy to look, well, I'm not where I want to be yet. Well, you got to say, well, at least I'm better than I was before.
I am right here, right now, in a better place than I was here and right now yesterday. And that's good, right?
Yeah.
That's good. Gold star. And
one more thing I would add to this is that we got to recognize that even though we're all one, we are individualized expressions within this one. And that we all, if this body's and energetic vibratory things is truly true, then when we're interacting with other people, our emotional fields are interacting with other people's emotional fields. And, we know this by the nature that it's beneficial to get around other people and be in their energy we know that at some level, that somehow even on Zoom Zoom is good to a degree, but we're not in the same physical space where we can have our energy bodies interact with other energy bodies. And there's value in that. But it also means that when we get with other people, if we can bring the energy up by focusing on the positive, looking for good things, it helps others beyond ourselves, even if we can't change somebody else's mind. And it also points to why sometimes we get around those curmudgeonly people who are negative about everything, that their energies can impact us. And sometimes we have to put a barrier or remove ourselves from them. But it's recognizing that we can move as a force for love through the planet and up level energy and emotions for everyone, by the fact that we all are vibrating at different levels. And how do we want to vibrate with each other?
Exactly. That's a good question. That's the thing, right? And what do we want to bring to that party? Like if we think of higher vibration existence within the planet as what we want and how we want us to be, then what am I bringing to that party? And how can I move myself into the place of bringing what it is that I want to bring into that party, and from a state of wholeness and a state of wellness and a state of well-being and a state of understanding that those things are up and down sometimes, and that's okay.
Yeah. Don't be a victim being done to you by the world that you can control. You have control here. You've got ability to change things.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes crappy things happen, and it's okay to have those feelings about those things and then be able to move through them without beating ourselves up because, oh my God, I got sad. Okay. We do. Things happen, we get sad, and that's okay.
It's good to look at that. I have moments where I get to have a day where I don't know what it is. I'm depressed. And my wife Mary does too. And what we typically do is share it so that we can stop and sort of like analyze it for a moment. What is it? She likes to say, is it tied to the death or loss of a certain anniversary date or something like that? But sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. But to say, there's sometimes a reason why, these emotional changes come on. And maybe you won't be able to identify it, but to even realize that it's passing through you in the moment.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just pajama day, right? Like,
yeah.
That's what I call it. Today is pajama day.
It's a video day for Mark.
Huh? It's a video day. Yeah. Pajamas and TV and good fiction. Yep.
Yep. Read my book.
Yes. And not anything that is about going to make me grow.
Well, I hope, we had a lot here, more than I thought we were going to get into, Barb. This has been a really...
As always, right? Yeah. Well, thank you again for listening. Thank you for being with us. Please, again, we'd love to hear your comments, suggestions for another topic, questions, concern, or you can just tell us that you think we're completely off the rails, but we're curious about your reaction. So appreciate your time and your energy, and the world's going to be a better place, right?
Right. It is.
There we go.
We're going to get on the rails.
We are. We are.
Bye, everybody.
See you next week.